What would you hope to see the government do at this point to kind of shore up your confidence that this doesn't bleed into something bigger?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the regional and community banking system is vital to the U.S. It extends credit into middle America, and we need that. And I get a lot of questions from our clients about it. I think what we're seeing is the stresses are still there. I look at the Fed data. I actually saw borrowing at the bank term funding program go up by $10 billion. Money market assets went up by $66 billion. That money's coming from somewhere, and it reflects still a lack of confidence in the regional banking system. This reminds me of the S&Ls back in the late 80s, early 90s, when there were a lot of them. They ran into similar problems. Ultimately, the government had to create the Resolution Trust and Resolution Trust Funding Corp, which created securitized debt for investors to invest in. And that created a consolidation of the S&Ls at the time, and I think a relatively healthy banking system. I think we're actually going to need something similar to that now. I think we've got to go through a period where we reorganize the regional and community banks, put them on their own stable footing, and restore confidence again.
As an investor, as part of the shadow banking system that everybody talks about, as we don't understand it, but it's there, you're there, it could represent it. How do you play at a time when perhaps some of these banks are pulling back? Do you step in? Do you say, you know what, some of these banks are beaten up? Do you play which ones you see as an advantage, an opportunity?
Well, there are those that have very good footprints. I think they're called now popularly the super regionals. Those make sense to us. Maybe that's the blueprint going forward. And then there are a lot of others that we're just concerned about. And we wonder, how does confidence get restored to them? I don't think the government can permanently backstop them through the FDIC. There's got to be some sort of reorganization coming up.
What about the creditworthiness of the companies that you lend to, both public and non-public? Do you feel that perhaps there is a risk that they do become more vulnerable to defaults, to other distress, as banks pull back?
Everyone's pulling back. The central banks are tightening credit. Now the banks have to tighten credit. And non-bank lenders ourselves. I did 5 client calls yesterday, and all of them were about, what do we own in our portfolios? And as you know, we've been as conservative as we could be, and they're drilling into specific line items and wanting to know. If they're doing it with us, they must be doing it with everyone, and that's going to cause private and public investors to pull back too.